reconvene our session here at the Peterson Institute for International Economics. We are scheduled to have luncheon remarks by Liu Mai, Secretary General of the China Development Research Foundation. I will return to introducing the Secretary General in a moment. Just to reiterate for those of you who just joined us, either in person or online, we're very excited today to be doing the Washington release of two parallel sets of studies, one from the Peterson Institute, one from CDRF, on what would be involved in moving ahead and what would be the benefits of U.S.-China bilateral investment treaty. Our version is available on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Google Play, as well as our website for free download. The CDRF publication is available in English on the CDRF website, and we will hope to have a Chinese translation of our work in time for the joint event we will be doing with CDRF in Beijing next month. We've had a very exciting, I frankly think, and substantive discussion this morning about issues of state-owned enterprises, competition policy, a little bit about CFIUS, a lot about precedents from China's other treaties and the U.S.'s lack of bits on how this would go forward. I'm going to ask Secretary General Liu to come forward and give a broader set of remarks, as he already introduced the conference in the context of his longstanding work and all of our common benefit from the increasing opening of China and the increasing integration of China and the U.S., going back to the key presidential decisions in both countries involving most favored nation status, WTO admission, and so on. And while perhaps not as earth-shaking, a bilateral investment treaty or its equivalent via TPP integration of China would be another major step in economic terms in this regard as an accent for reform in China and, I believe, liberalization in China in both political and economic terms, but also an improvement for the U.S. Just so that you all fully appreciate, Liu Mai has been Secretary General of the China Development Research Foundation since 1998. He is, of course, at the helm of China's most prestigious annual economic event, the China Development Forum. He was the organizer and coordinator of China's Human Development Report 2005, which got worldwide acclaim. He has been involved and thoughtful about, as well as active in, issues of rural reform in China. He studied in the U.S., was a research assistant at the Harvard Institute for International Development. He has been involved with Chinese business in Hong Kong. And as he mentioned earlier, the China Development Research Foundation, our partner in this endeavor, is an independent agency funded by, but independent of, the Chinese government, and we're very proud to be working with them. Liu Mai has a master's degree from my alma mater in public administration from the Keynote School, as well as a BA in economics from the Beijing College of Economics. I would now like to invite Secretary General Liu to take the stage and give us his thoughts on this important topic.
Thanks, Adams, for your very kind introduction. Today in this room, there are many friends. They are distinguished person in U.S., so I'm very honored to talk here. We discussed about the bilateral investment treaty between U.S. and China. So I think our friends would like to know where China goes, what kind of the country it will become. Now is number 2, consider about the economic size, and sooner or later, in total GDP, it will pass the US. So it's a competitor, it's a friend country, or it's another. So if we talk about this issue, I would like to recall the President Xi Jinping before he came to this position 2 years ago. 2 years ago, I think U.S. Many people already know him. He visited U.S. as a vice president. And many Chinese know him. He comes from a very low position, from a county and a city and a province, and then to the central. But could he handle this very difficult task? Not so many people have that, didn't think in that way. It's a difficult task. Two sides try to influence him. Many people want to give him idea. Very pessimistic group think there's a party congress. It's called 18. But they said maybe there's now 19 or 20 party congress. That's one group of people. Another group of people so proud of China's performance during the world financial crisis, and they model it, say this is a state capitalism, and we are the model in the world. So both sides try to put this on his shoulder. But he came, make it very clear about the 8 disciplines, 6 forbidden at the beginning, and the 1 the people support, and then clearly implement his policy. Recently, he summarized his policy with 4 comprehensive. I just want to explain what is about the 4 comprehensive by him. First comprehensive is build a comprehensive whereof society by 2020. This is the commitment by Communist Party. It's a sort of a social contract they want to achieve. By 2020, the GDP will double compared with 2010. And also, the income, the individual income will also double 2020 compared with 2010. That's 2 double. And also it says in all fronts, that means not economic growth, but also political, cultural, environment, all those should make a progress. I should mention, whereof society is the goal set up by Deng Xiaoping. Some people close to him try to figure out who gave this idea to him. But the result is nobody raised this. It's the Deng Xiaoping himself make it 小康社会. What does it mean, 小康? These words come from a history 2,000 years ago. It's the idea about you have enough clothes and food. You do not worry about the food and wear, but it's not rich. So that's a 小康, whereof. And by his idea, there's a 3-step. 1990, double the GDP. By 2000, double it again. And by 2050, we'll catch up by the modern society. So the party or our leader decided by the 2000 where we should go. They decided to keep this whereof society and make it become the comprehensive. They didn't choose another term. Someone suggests we become the modern society like during the Chairman Mao, 四个现代化 for modernization. They didn't choose that. They decided to use the where of society in the comprehensive. That's very practical. Our goal is still, by 2020, we are a developing country. Compared with many developed countries, we should realize the difficulty in China. For example, in China, a stunting rate under 5 years old children is 4%. This number is very close to US. US, this stunting rate is 3%. But in the rural area, in the poor rural area, is 20%. 1 of the 5 children under 5 years old is stunting. So this is the reality, the big gap between the rural and the city, and the big gap between the different group. So by 2020, the Chinese government promised to bring the well-off society in the whole country, benefit the whole people. So recently, President Xi emphasized about the rural development, about the anti-poverty, and emphasized about build up the social protection for all. That's a difficult job, not easy. But I think our leader will keep their promise, will increase the expenditure for those for those social protection. And by 2020, we will have a better society. Second, he emphasized, is comprehensively deepening reform. As I said before that, some people suggest that government intervention is very good. So state capitalism is the model for the other country. But by the decision made by the Communist Party, the Central Committee, is the market should play the role, a decisive role. Not the state, not the government. So I think this is a market economy very close to the other world, and we don't think China will go another way, but we will go just the market economy. So price will be decided by the market. Government working on the market, in the market, and so no difference compared with many other countries. So by this plan, the several president, not several, but the President Jiang Zemin, President Hu Jintao talk about economic reform, and they take some action. But very difficult in the many areas. They make progress. It's difficult. With the WTO, that's the biggest achievement. They abolished more than 300 regulations, and then we have progress. But after that, the reform looks like have many difficulty, move very slowly. So the whole society enjoy the prosperity after joining the WTO, but no big incentive to push forward of reform. Now come to President Xi Jinping. He figured out our growth rate will slow down. The only way to keep our economy growth is reform, is make it more efficient. So he make a comprehensive plan, including more than 300 items to do the reform. And he himself become the leader of this leading group, take responsibility for the reform. So no any ministers, no any local government can find some excuse and say this is difficult. But he himself promised by 2020 we will make a market economy work more efficiently, more in the right way. So last year, in several areas, they make progress. One is the financial reform and the tax reform. This is Lou Jiwei, Minister of Finance, lead this reform. Before he became the minister, he already have this plan, but we saw that plan now become the reality. It's define the central government's responsibility and the local government responsibility clearly, and make those financial resources available for the local government. It is unconditional transfer, and also change the tax system. All those step by step, last year and this year, it's become the reality. It's put a very clear restriction on the local government who borrow the money, who guarantee the company they owned the borrowed money. So this is the one area we see the progress. Another area we see is hukou system reform. The government promised by 2020 at least 100 million of local residents have a hukou in the city. But meanwhile, all the residents who live in the city should enjoy the equalized public service. The third area is about the land reform. The land reform will take several years because now they start the experiment. First one is 确权颁证, is farmers have a right to use this land, but that land is only decided in the village and registered in the village, oral or writing. But now the government should make it very clear who use this land, have that right, and give them a document. That make the farmers leave this village and move to other place easier, but make the government to seize this land more difficult because you need to negotiate with each farmers because that's certified the documents about the land use right. So there still are some difficult area. We hope this year they can make progress. One is SOE reform. This morning, they already mentioned the SOE need to reform to improve their efficiency. The big issue, I think, is not simply the ownership, but the most important is governance. Governance structure changed. The behavior of a manager will change. So we saw that many companies already have those changes. So I hope this year it will make some progress. Most difficult part actually is that the body, the ministry, they call the 国资委 Committee of State-Owned Enterprises. Each month they issue about 100 documents. They have a lot of division in that committee, and all of them want to issue some document, regulation, instruction to state-owned enterprises in the very broad range. So to let them give up their power is not easy, but it will happen this year. So in overall prospect of reform in 2015, I think is optimistic. We will see several new measurement to be implemented, and I think BIT will promote the economy to move into the more liberal way and give the reform a pressure to move forward. The discussion about the SOE between U.S. and China is also helpful in China to implement the reform measure. The third is comprehensive advancing the rule of law. This is the important issue. Chinese Communist Party just have a central committee and issue the documents on this. So they make several progress in this regard. It's aimed to for the revised the legal system, current legal system. There is already legal system there, but we saw something is still missing, like 民法典, the law of 民法典怎么说? Civil law. So, but also make the legal system independent. That's proposed by the many people, including Peterson Institute, about this, and it become more closely to that, independent. The local government and the central government should not intervene the course, the word. And anyone give a phone call or give some suggestion, they should write it down and report it so publicly. So that's make those government officials more difficult to do that. And some other things change according to this reform plan. I will not go to the detail. The key issue about this is rule of law in the one hand, but in another hand is party CCPC's role. So till now, by the Chinese government, they hope these two will go together. Communist Party lead the people to make the law, and meanwhile, it will working under this law, constitution. I hope these two sides, rule of law, two ideas, and the leadership of Communist Party can work together in the coming several years. It's a good try to do that. So this is the third part. It already make a progress, especially on what I mentioned, the legal system independent. The fourth one, many people may interest, is about enforcing party discipline strictly and comprehensively. So that means from one side, they have a more restriction on the behavior of a government official. From another side is the anti-corruption movement. So since the 18th National Congress of a Communist Party, 76 government officials at the level of vice ministries and above in the government. So they're corrupted, and they have been removed. Someone think this is just a power struggle, but Xi Jinping explained this in the meeting and say evidence is there, is very clear. Who can point out which one is a wrong accused? Nobody can say that. And all those people, 76, someone already or someone will be put in the court. And after that, they will send to Qincheng, you know, that prison near Beijing. So what's the situation now? Is finished or is close to the finished? No. Xi Jinping said recently, it says it's still in the 焦灼状态, stalemate, and the corrupted force and the anti-corrupt force now is fighting. And the fighting, we didn't get the overwhelming success. So the Xi Jinping said he will lead this continue. Someone worried, like Professor McFarland at Harvard, said probably all those corrupted will get together and fight back. It's not easy, and I don't think they will success like that. So if they can do this, totally the culture of the government official will be changed. We see some changes. We organize a training program at the beginning with Harvard Kennedy School. At the beginning, all government officials cook the dishes in the dorm. But after that, after 2008, they have a lot of money. And every day they eat in the restaurant and have a liquor. So that's a really bad, very bad culture. And in the last 3 years, it's a change back. They cook in their dorm by themselves and take that time to study, but not drink. So those are changes. And the government has decided, from one side, they fight with those corrupted government officials, but from another side, they will make sure the new appointed government official will be clean. So now the measure is everybody report your assets if you're above the division chief, including myself. I'm not a government official, but I have to report about that. And if they want to appoint you as a government new position, in 3 days, 9 ministries will work together to make it clear. Do you have the foreign export, green card, U.S. green card? What the assets you have, what the stock you have, and so on. So 3 days. I heard that many government officials in Guangdong did not get a promotion because they failed to write those, to report their assets. So people said, if I were young, I will get a good position because so many high-level government officials removed. So 76. That's a good news. Huh? Well, I'm also optimistic by this. If they can keep fighting with those corrupted government officials, meanwhile promote the right people I think after 5 years after this 19 People's Congress, we will see the new teams working in the government. So in general, I see China move in the right direction with some risk. If Xi Jinping cannot successfully lead this full comprehensive, it will be disaster to us. So from abroad, you cannot give any influence in this domestic issue. But with those BIT, free trade agreement, I think you can make a more friendly environment for China economic growth and keep its openness to outside. Some sentence, something U.S. usually use, including friends in the Peterson, you use a challenge. You think about China, if they make a right direction, either or not, they will challenge U.S. leadership in the world. I don't like this word, challenge. Whenever you have a different opinion, for example, in my institute, it's very usual. I have my idea, but my colleague have a different. Do I call them challenge me? No, I will not say that. I will listen. Probably I'm right, probably him right. So U.S. make many good decisions, but also made some mistake. If we look back in the last 10 years, we can see all those could be a challenge, you can call this, or maybe you can think it's come from a good friend's suggestion. If we look at the world in this way, we can see a very bright future, but not a fight, not a challenge, and how do I say? Anyhow, that's just my suggestion. So I end it here. Thank you.
He may be older for government official purposes, but he was able to just step up on stage like that, so that was pretty good. I'm very aware the clock is running, and given that the Secretary General gave us his insights on the broader China reform agenda, including some of the motivations that he believes President Xi is talking about, I think rather than my pressing him on interpretations of the word challenge, I will allow our audience to pose a couple questions. What I'd suggest is let me ask people to identify themselves. I'll recognize you. I'll gather 3 questions and then let the Secretary General respond, and we'll take it from there. Who would like to be first? Yes, please. No, we actually are putting this on the web, so you hand me the glasses, Jessica, and you can hand that gentleman the microphone. That's fine, thank you.
Hello. My name is Carter Doherty. I'm with Bloomberg News. I wondered if you could elaborate a little bit on your explanation of how the bilateral investment treaty can help to promote the reform process in China, and in particular, whether the policy choice that is faced here in Washington about whether to make this broadly speaking, relatively narrow or relatively broad matters for the internal process in China. How this question of the design of the agreement, how that fits in with China's interest in it.
Thank you, Carter. Is there a second question someone would like to pose? Come on, by any definition of the word challenge, people should be willing to speak. All right, so why don't you, if you're willing, Mr. Secretary General, respond to Mr. Doherty on the question of broad versus wide bit, how that would affect reform in China, and then we'll see if, what? Broad versus narrow. Broad versus narrow.
First is about the broad. U.S.-China relations is important to China. It's a very sensitive issue. Both sides have some group of people, feel very suspicious for other side. No trust between these two group of people. So we need to move forward. What does mean rebalancing? U.S. do have a big interest in Asia. I think China should welcome that. But if rebalancing only means something like a contain, like a military of action, that means the policy change. So we need to keep this momentous. We need to convince both sides there are some people do not trust each other and think this is a consistent the policy for U.S. and for China. It's a real welcome China to be growth, but not contain it. This is a broad way. It's a gesture. And the reality is China really increased their investment abroad. We don't expect that before, but Asia Society did a report, I think 7 years ago, and CDRF helped them to release that report in China. It says that by 2020, China FDI abroad will buy $2 trillion US. Nobody believed that at that time. But now, last year, we are 1.4 trillion of FDI abroad. So with that treaty, it's guaranteed the right for Chinese investor to come to US and also make Chinese financial market and other service sector is more open. This is the benefit for both sides.
Thank you. We have time for one more question if someone wishes to take the opportunity. Yes, please, if you could go to the microphone and back.
Thank you very much. My name is Fadil Yaqub. I'm from the Egyptian embassy, and I also worked before in our embassy in Beijing. My question that now China has negotiated this investment treaty with the United States, is there any possibility that China can consider joining the TransPacific Partnership Agreement? Thank you.
I think Chinese government like to join that if U.S. government really welcome. Free trade agreement between U.S. and China is an important issue. 2009, Mr. Hank Greenberg raised this in front of our premier. We organize China Development Forum, and each year in the end, all participants, foreign participants, go to meet the premier. And Hank raised this free trade agreement. So our premier Wen Jiabao said, this is a right question, important suggestion. I support it. And if it's become the reality, you are the first one to give this proposal. And last year, I saw Fred Bergstein and Hank Greenberg wrote a piece and estimate with this free treatment, China will get more like 300 billion of benefit from this free trade. And the U.S. Totally export will increase 400 billion, and American income will increase 100 billion. That's a big number, and I think we should overcome all those political obstacles and reach that and get that. 300 billion is a big money.
We do like big money. Just to build a moment on what Secretary General said, in part thanks to Hank Greenberg's impetus, but in part with support from U.S.-China Business Council, which you've mentioned, and in part because of Fred Bergstein's vision, we did do this study we released roughly a few months ago by Gary Huffbauer, Sean Miner, Fred Bergstein, and co-authors. And we went through what it would take to really achieve the free trade agreement. And I think there are always going to be objectors, like you said. There are people who don't trust on each side. But I am thoroughly convinced, based on our discussions following that work, that the current Obama administration, the trade team led by Michael Froman, genuinely would welcome Chinese participation so long as it would not indefinitely postpone the conclusion of the talks, and so long as it did not downgrade the standards of the talks. And that's part of the reason we're having this discussion of the bilateral investment treaty, as some people here mentioned earlier this morning. You know, the investor dispute settlement, the state-owned enterprise, the competition policy issues being talked about in TPP are much the same set of standards that we today, your organization and ours, are talking about putting between China and US on investment. And in the last chapter of Gary, Fred, and Sean's book, they talk about using TPP or free trade area of Asia Pacific as the means of getting China and US together. The issue, of course, remains, as you know well, there is an understanding in China and an understandable feeling in China. You went through the accession process previously. You don't want to be coming into a new negotiation after the deal is settled. But the reality is that's where we're going to be. And so I think, I mean, obviously your thoughts in this matter more than mine, but I think it's going to be a diplomatic challenge that the US and China are able to build on what we hope will be a TPP agreement without people in China saying, oh, we're having the gate barred to us again, or people are demanding stuff from us again. I don't know how you feel, but.
As I said, I work in the nonprofit organization and do not represent the government. But in general, I think Chinese government is willing to negotiate with United States. So we do not have the specific problems for each item. It depends on the negotiation. Put those things under the table, on the table, and it can be solved about those. If we come to think about, well, in the goal, we want to reach it, the political willingness is there. I think in the finally we can get that. There are some difficulties probably in Congress, in some political situation. But if we work together and also work with local government in United States, state government, well, we can solve this. We can overcome these problems.
That would be great. Please join me in thanking Secretary General Liu for his remarks. I ask everyone except him and me to stay in their seats. We're just going to take 3 minutes to rearrange the stage, in which case then Jeff Schott will chair the closing panel for today.